Leonardo da Vinci once said that simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. This week's Full Frame guests are proving that simple ideas to foster change can have the most profound impact. I'm Mei Lee in Los Angeles. Let's take it full frame. Welcome back. See this bar of soap? Well, did you know it has the power to prevent millions of deaths worldwide? According to the World Health Organization, pneumonia and diarrheal disease are two of the leading causes of death among children under 5 years old, and both can be prevented by access to simple hygiene products that a lot of us take for granted. Sean Seipler is on a mission to save millions of lives with soap, while at the same time offering programs to protect the environment. He's the founder of the nonprofit Clean the World, the largest global recycler of hotel hygiene products. Since launching the effort in Orlando, Florida in 2009, Clean the World has doled out more than 30 million bars of soap to children and families in 100 countries around the world. Sean Seipler joins us now from Orlando to tell us more about this fantastic program. Sean, welcome to Full Frame.
Thank you, May. It is my pleasure to be here.
Well, listen, Sean, I know that you got this idea in a hotel room. It was like a light bulb moment. Tell me what happened there.
Yeah, in 2009, I was a frequent traveler. I ran a global sales team for a technology company, and I was typically on the road 4 nights a week, traveling from one city to another. And as I traveled from city to city, I never took the little bar of soap and the little bottle of shampoo with me. So one day in a hotel room, I was very curious as to what happened to those items when I was done using them. And I called the front desk at the hotel and asked what happened to the soap when I was done with it. And of course, they told me that they throw it away, which I thought was a really interesting answer and probably a lot of waste.
Yeah.
So I did some research at the time and figured out that in the United States, we were throwing away about 1 million bars of soap every single day, which of course was a huge amount of waste. Yeah. And so I did some more research and tried to figure out, you know, could we recycle soap? Was there a way to take dirty soap and turn it into new soap? And there was very simple ways of melting it down and reforming it into new bars. But the kind of the light bulb moment for Clean the World was when we found studies that showed that 2 of the top killers of children worldwide, as you mentioned, pneumonia and diarrheal disease, which at the time killed 9,000 children under the age of 5 every single day.
Every day? That's phenomenal.
Every single day.
Wow.
The beautiful opportunity was these studies showed that if we just gave those children soap and taught them how and when to wash their hands, that we could cut those deaths in half. So that light bulb moment was 1 million bars of soap being thrown away, 9,000 children under the age of 5 dying every day to diseases preventable by soap and hygiene education. And so how do we make that connection happen? And that was how we birthed Clean the World.
But there's a crucial element there, Sean, that not a lot of folks would be able to take that concept and that realization, which is a major realization, you know, not knowing that that happens, 9,000 kids die every day, to then make it a reality, right? So you were so committed to this idea, you left your job, you left your career, and committed 100% of your time and effort to this.
That's correct. You know, I have 4 children. I had a moment sitting on my bed where sort of, you know, the heavens opened up, and I guess that moment happened. And to me, it was a very simple math problem that could have profound results. 1 million bars of soap being thrown away, 9,000 children dying, and I just got to figure out how to take the 1 million bars, recycle it, and get it to the 9,000 children. So really at that moment, it seemed a very easy response, I think, because of the way I was reared, to want to help others, to want to help those who were hurting.
Yeah. But what about execution, Sean? I mean, you have to actually make this work, right? So technically speaking, you have to figure out how you're going to get the soap and how you're going to get it made and how you're going to get the hotels to agree to give you the soap. So what were the logistics behind how you actually made this work?
Yeah, well, when I first jumped in, I'm one of those that just sort of jumps in the water and doesn't know how deep it is.
Okay.
And that was clearly the case with Clean the World. Very quickly after leaving my job, I was able to get my family members together, and we got into a single car garage in downtown Orlando, and we started approaching hotels in Central Florida with this concept to put a recycling bin in their hotel. We would ask their housekeepers as they clean the rooms every day to, instead of throwing away the soap and bottled amenities, to please put them in little bags that would make their way down to our bins. And we would then figure out how to pick it up and bring it into our single car garage cooking recycling center, where if you could picture in a small garage, we all sat around on upside down pickle buckets with potato peelers, and we would scrape the outside of bars of soap, and when they were scraped, we then had a meat grinder that would grind it up, and then we had 4 cookers that were cooking the soap into a paste, and all this effort for 500 bars of soap, in those early days, and that was a huge day for us.
Yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's like grassroots effort right there, hands-on.
That's right. And but, hotels were very interested in the concept because they saw this waste every day.
Right.
They were really interested in the concept of getting soap to those in need globally. And oftentimes in the hotel, the housekeeper comes from a country of need, maybe sending money and other resources back to their home country of need. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those things resonated with the hotels early on. It just became a matter of how operationally do we do it, and then, of course, how do we create a financial model that was going to allow us to scale the business, continue the business, which was also a very, very tricky part of the early days.
Right, right. And I know that, like you just mentioned, the hotels were willing to contribute because they also saw the waste. So you have some really big hotel partners now, don't you?
We do. We were early on in Central Florida. Walt Disney World Resorts came on board, which was a huge name for us when we first launched into Vegas. Caesars Entertainment brought us to Vegas, and shortly after that, Sands, a Venetian Palazzo in Wynn Encore came on board. Sands helped us go to Asia, and so we launched in Macau and Hong Kong not too long after that, and have some great brands like Mandarin Oriental and Hilton and Marriott and Starwood that operate our program globally. So the hotels, in terms of the impact, both environmental and social impact that we could drive, we're absolutely on board. We then had to also convince them on the financial aspect. And so we had to, in 2009, the economy was in very rough shape. And so having a completely philanthropic model did not work for us early on. We actually went broke very quickly and almost never got out of that garage. So we had to ask hotels to not only participate from an operational standpoint, but we needed them to participate from a financial standpoint. And so we had to create a model whereby hotels bought the recycling program, and so they had to see value in it, not just from a internal impact standpoint, what it means, to their employees, to the guests, to the environment, but it also had to make sense financially, because that was the only way we were going to be able to scale the organization. And thank goodness those brands that I mentioned did that, saw the value, and got behind us in every way possible.
And obviously now it's really working quite well. So let's talk about the impact that you've seen since you started this program around the world. I mean, as I read in the intro, you're in 100 countries, right, this program. So tell me about the direct impact that you've seen on these communities, on these kids.
That has been the most inspiring and fulfilling part of Clean the World, being able to see the communities that we're touching, the individuals that we are helping. When we started, there were 9,000 children under the age of 5 that were dying to these 2 diseases. Today, we fast forward 7 years later, we've reduced that death rate by more than 35%. There are now less than 6,000 children that are dying every day to those 2 diseases. It's still a child every 15 seconds, so there's still a lot of work to do.
Right.
But we have some great programming on the ground in Kenya, in Haiti, in the Philippines, as well as we work with a number of great organizations like Children International, Operation Christmas Child, World Vision, the American Red Cross, International Red Cross. These organizations are taking our product and inserting them into their WASH programs, and so they're addressing clean water and sanitation and health and hygiene.
Right.
We just had a program, we just got some results back. There are 4,000 school children, for instance, in Kenya, who are in a very tough area, an area, some of it controlled by the Al-Shabaab terrorist organization. And so these kids, oftentimes the girls who are going to school are sort of forbidden to go. So when they go, it's a risk for them to go into the classroom. When we went into this community, there was an 80% infectious rate of diarrheal disease. We've handed out soap on a regular basis. We have educated the children in these schools, and the first reports back are a 62% reduction in that rate of infectious disease.
That's incredible, Sean. 62%.
It's a huge result. That's right. It's a huge a huge reduction. So, you know, that invigorates us, that inspires us to want to do more. We're now launching another program in Tanzania. That program is actually supported by Starwood as well. So some of our corporate hotel partners are now jumping in on the impact development side of what we do so that we can do even more from a mission perspective. So that's been a huge result. We've sent a couple million bars of soap to Haiti since the earthquake. We've been able to see firsthand that impact. So just a great part of what we're doing is that mission impact side.
Because it is so amazing when you think about it. It's such a simple concept that just washing your hands and just better hygiene with a bar of soap can make such an enormous impact in that way. And the fact that you're seeing it and doing it firsthand, I mean, you know, you don't need more proof than that something so simple can literally change the world.
You're exactly right. I mean, we went through, in the developed world, we went through a hygiene revolution. In the United States, in Europe, it happened in the early 1900s. We sort of accidentally, a doctor one day delivering babies started washing his hands in between those deliveries and realized that the mortality rate of the babies started to reduce when he was washing his hands. And that's how sort of soap and hygiene came into you know, the medical industry and really the developed world. So whereby we have that in our, you know, in our society, so many in the underdeveloped do not understand that. They don't have a culture of hygiene. They don't have the resources and the means. Right. The supply demand's just not there. So we're really addressing those areas that very simply just need to have soap and know how and when to wash their hands. Right.
Sean, I got to ask you a pragmatic question, and I'm sure a lot of people ask you this as well. But when it comes to sanitizing the soap that's been used, you mentioned in the starting days, you guys would just use a potato peeler and just peel the soap. But how do you ensure that the soap is genuinely sanitized before you make it into new soap and send it out?
That's a great question. So we do regular testing on our soap. We have a company that we send soap to on a quarterly basis. They test our soap to ensure that it's free of any pathogens or any bad diseases or items on them. Through our recycling process, as we surface clean and sterilize soap, we are constantly heating it up and then cooling it down again and then heating it up. And through that heating process, soap naturally disinfects itself. So it's actually cleaning itself. We don't need to add the sterilization chemicals that we add to it, which we do on a very, very small basis. We do it nonetheless, but actually the act of heating itself up, soap actually disinfects and is clean. And again, we test it on a regular basis to ensure that that's the case. Okay.
Well, the social impact and the hygiene impact on these various communities that you're helping out is incredible, but we should also mention the environmental impact, the positive impact this is having, because it's amazing when you think about hotels and all the little bottles and the packaging every day that's used by guests in the hotel and what kind of a negative environmental impact that has. So you're definitely, with this program, also taking that out of the equation too, right?
That is correct. We have 4,000 hotels that run our program across North America, Europe, and Asia. We recycle about 750,000 hotel rooms on a daily basis. And in 7 years, we have diverted 18 million pounds of waste from landfills on those continents. So it's a huge environmental impact. There are millions of bottles that are going into landfills every single day. The hotel industry is one of the largest creators of waste, but it's great to see the industry really figuring out sustainable programs, initiatives, technologies, so that they can become more sustainable. And again, I think that that response to our program has been one of those answers whereby they see the soap in the bottles going into landfills. They don't want that to occur. And instead, we bring a social impact result, which is even better, sort of a win-win-win.
Yeah.
But it's been a great sustainability and environmental story.
So, Sean, do you think there's going to come a day where you're going to be able to, through this program and obviously the efforts of a lot of other folks and a lot of other companies, that we're going to be able to really almost eradicate, these diseases that can be simply remedied by just better hygiene?
Without a doubt, we believe so. We've already seen a 35% reduction in the death rate because of the efforts of Clean the World and other organizations that are really focused from a wash perspective and from a clean water perspective. We see great movement, for instance, in India, a country of 1.2 billion. Over 600 million do not have toilets, and the Prime Minister there recently said that we need to build more toilets than we do temples. So we're seeing that hygiene and sanitation is at the forefront in a lot of countries that so desperately need it from an attention standpoint. So I do believe that these are simple answers. Hygiene, sanitation, very simple answers to problems that we see, over a death rate that can easily be prevented.
Right.
So yes, we really believe that we will eradicate those two top killers of children through these hygiene efforts.
What a phenomenal goal that would be to achieve. Final question, Sean. Any other projects that you guys have in mind for Clean the World?
Yeah, we have seen a tremendous response from our volunteer community who come to our facilities either in Orlando, Las Vegas, Montreal, Hong Kong, and they volunteer with us. They engage in giving back and serving and helping others. That has really been one of the really cool outcomes, that sort of unintended outcomes that we've seen. We need that help in order to process the products and get them sorted and get them recycled. Yep. And so we really see a great opportunity to take that model and mobilize it and perhaps leverage those 4,000 hotels that we have, which are already places where people come to, they meet, they rest, they do a number of things, they dine, they come there. And so, can we take that volunteering and mobilize it across the world so that individuals and communities can do something that I really believe everybody innately has in their DNA, and that is to want to serve and help others. And so we really see that as something we'll do in the future, bringing that opportunity to volunteer, to help, to serve, and bring it into the community, mobilizing it across various communities where our hotel partners are, so that we can engage so many who, in their DNA want to help and serve others.
Right. Well, Sean, it takes one person, right, to make a difference, and then you cause that ripple effect around the world. So congratulations on the success of Clean the World and what you're doing. So thank you so much, Sean. Great to talk to you.
Thank you, Meg. Great talking to you as well.
All right. Well, coming up next, one American company is saving the world's children one nutrition bar at a time. According to UNICEF, close to 160 million children under the age of 5 are chronically undernourished worldwide, and around 3 million of these children die due to undernutrition every year. Our next guest is providing a solution by producing simple products that are full of micronutrients to treat and prevent malnutrition in developing countries. Navin Salem is the founder of Adizia, a nonprofit U.S.-based food aid company. Her organization has reached over 3.5 million children in 46 countries since starting production in its Providence, Rhode Island facility in 2010. Naven joins us now from Providence to tell us more about Adesia's mission to save as many lives as possible in the developing world. Naven, welcome to the show.
Thank you, May.
Well, let me ask you, of course, why did you start this? What triggered you to begin this mission to nourish malnourished kids all over the world?
Yeah, so there were a couple different factors. One is that my father is from Tanzania originally. I have a business background and also 4 daughters. You know, it's kind of those 3 things pieced together that began Adesia, and the creation of a social enterprise that is mission is to treat and prevent malnutrition for those children that are most vulnerable. And so I did my research back in Tanzania, where my father, grandparents, and great-grandparents all are from originally.
So obviously you had traveled to the area, so did you witness firsthand what was happening to these children?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been face-to-face with kids and their mothers who are going through really tough challenges, especially in times of drought or conflict and wars and natural disasters that are a trouble in these countries all the time. And being face-to-face with these mothers is really challenging to be a parent and to raise children in these kinds of situations. And so I realized that, you know, malnutrition really shouldn't be killing children in this day and age. We know what the problem is and the solution, and there's a really easy way to be able to solve this problem.
The one thing I wanted to ask you about, one of the products that you create is called Plumpy Nut. One of the most popular, I guess, and it's also literally life-changing to those who consume it, the kids who actually take it in. There are some transformative stories that you have, but I want to take a look at a picture of a before and after of a child who was eating the Plumpy Nut. This was before, so very, very undernourished, obviously, and this is her after. That's remarkable. So is this a typical transformation?
Absolutely. And so this transformation took place over a 6-week time period. And
6
I think
weeks?
that's
it?
Absolutely, yeah. 6 weeks and about $50 worth of fortified peanut butter is able to make this transformation. And just to be clear, I didn't invent Plumpy Nut. It was created by really a collaboration of people, a French food engineer and nutritionist and others really collaborated to come up with these formulas. And the reason that they're revolutionary, they come in a sachet that looks like this. This is Plumpy Nut. And it's really revolutionary because it doesn't need to be mixed with water or refrigerated. And these are 2 things that just aren't available in the developing world. And so this enabled us to be able to reach children in really rural parts of the world who weren't able to be reached in the past. And so to be able to make this change, really drastic change. I mean, sometimes I'm looking for an earring or a braid or something on a child to even recognize that it's the same child because they've changed so significantly over those 6 weeks.
I'm stunned to hear that it only took 6 weeks for this little girl to become healthy again. So tell me, obviously these products are full of nutrients, micronutrients as they're called. Tell me why micronutrients are so important when it comes to nourishing undernourished and malnourished kids.
Yep, so the Plumpy Nut formula is peanuts, sugar, vegetable oil, milk powder, and the vitamins and minerals. And it really is the milk powder and the vitamins and minerals, the micronutrients that are critical to being able to achieve growth at that high rate. And little people need the micronutrients to develop their brains and their bodies. And if we don't deliver those micronutrients during this critical window of opportunity, then it is lost. We cannot regain that intellectual capacity later in life. And so if we want children to learn in schools, if we want them to live productive lives and do well and get good jobs in their futures, we really need to make sure that we intervene at these critical times to deliver the micronutrients, or the effects are irreversible. Wow. And the fact that we have something so simple that can make this lifelong impact, to not do it is really, a really lost opportunity and something that we can't afford to not pay attention to.
I totally agree with you, Nevin. So in terms of, you said 6 weeks for this little girl that we just saw photos of. Is that the average amount of time that a child should be eating your product? And if so, how often? How many times a day are they supposed to consume the product?
Okay, so typically they're going into health clinics, and we're working with existing healthcare systems and healthcare workers. Okay. And it's like a food by prescription. And so based on the child's height and age and nutritional status, on average they're getting about 3 packets per day. And this is a full daily allotment. And so if they're able to take this between 6 and 10 weeks, we do expect a full recovery. None of these products are intended to replace traditional foods or anything of the sort. It's really to bridge during these critical times of emergency, really, in the many different ways that they come about. And so we're here to help bridge that gap so that children not only survive, but have the opportunity to thrive as well.
Wondering, though, what happens after they're done with the treatment? They become healthy, but they're still kids and they're still growing and they still need the nutrients. So is there some sort of follow through? What if they can't get the proper nutrition after they finish the program?
Yep, that's a great question. So, I mean, every scenario is really very different. Traditionally, you know, Plumpy Nut could be used during the lean season during a hunger gap. So if you imagine that your family's harvest is 2 months out, and that's a time where you'll see a spike in malnutrition wards filling up with children because the parents have run out of money. They don't quite have enough supplies to be able to get them to that point. And that's when we come in and kind of cover that gap. Once the harvest comes in, they're able to get back up on their feet. So we might have an exit program where they are still coming into feeding centers, but we know that soon they'll be well on their way. And whether it's a natural disaster or emergency, similar in those situations, we're there during the crux of the emergency, and as they are able to get back up on their feet, then we can move them to their traditional foods and market supplies of what they would normally consume.
I got to ask you, though, Naveen, you are a mother of 4, and you're doing this at the same time. I mean, I would call you Superwoman, but I mean, what's your secret? That must, I mean, that's got to be tough.
It is, definitely, I can't lie. I've gotten pretty good at multitasking, and I'm not sure which is more challenging, being a mom of 4 girls or trying to feed 1 million children a year. And I would actually have to say that probably being mom is the hardest but most rewarding job, and it makes feeding 1 million seem actually a little bit easier. My girls will be surprised to hear that, I'm sure. But.
That's a pretty funny comparison, but the fact that you're doing both, I commend you for sure. Let's talk about funding. How do you get your funding for your programs, and is that steadily increasing as the word gets out on the work that you're doing?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, funding, so we're set up as a social enterprise, which means that we're selling our products to UNICEF, to World Food Program, and the U.S. government. And they're working with the smaller groups to do distributions as well, all the way down to the field level and that individual clinic level. Right. And funding is always going to be part of the problem. You know, it is increasing, and governments understand the importance of addressing nutrition in terms of looking at their whole country's health and potential for, you know, increasing GDP even. I mean, the impact is that large. And so they realize that we need to invest more, but of course, you know, it's never quite enough, and it's very difficult to balance resources, especially when we have a Syrian refugee crisis over here, and we have one of the worst droughts in over 30 years in Ethiopia, and we have post-Ebola work going on in West Africa. I mean, there's a lot of problems in the world, and so trying to balance where we're able to direct solutions is going to always be a challenge. But at least we know that the places that we are able to reach, like Syria and Ethiopia and West Africa, we're able to see the results and the impact hope to continue to do better each time. There's always room for improvement, and there's always room for more funding necessary as well.
You know, I was also really fascinated, and I thought it was great that your plant and your business here in Rhode Island, you actually employ former refugees who have come from different parts of the world. So that obviously was another mission of yours, to try to help those here who have come to the States.
Right, absolutely. I mean, no one can understand being in the position of needing to depend on help from somebody else. And no refugee thinks that they're going to be put in this situation and isn't prepared for that. They had normal lives with great jobs and families and everything, and the next day you're put in a situation where you're depending on someone else for your next meal. Yeah. And so the people who work with me at Adisia really understand. They've lived through these experiences before, and that's what motivates them and motivates the rest of our team to work as hard as we do, to get orders out on time, to make sure that the quality is the highest it can, and we do it for the most efficient process that we can do. Because of their stories and their strength and their resilience that they teach us every day is really what makes us special and like a family at our company.
So I'm sure every packet of your product is made with love and a lot more depth to it than just like churning it out, which is great to hear. One last question.
Absolutely.
How can people donate to Adisia? Where should we go for that?
So you can go to adisianutrition.org. And every little bit helps. Even a $50 donation equals one life. And that one life can be revolutionary and life-changing to that family. And so every little bit helps. Please go to our website, check out the information that we have, learn a little bit more about us, and help us. We need all the help we can get to really make an even bigger impact in the years to come. So I appreciate the opportunity.
$50 to save a life. That's pretty extraordinary. Navin, thank you so much for your time, and the work you're doing is incredible. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much, May.
We'll be right back to meet a social entrepreneur who is giving fashionistas the chance to help school children in Africa. Stay with us. According to a 2013 UNESCO study, a staggering 124 million children and adolescents do not have access to formal primary education. The numbers may actually be higher, but the tools and measurements to get more accurate figures aren't really available. Well, one person who's trying to lower those numbers is social entrepreneur Matthew Clough. His company Stone and Cloth, specializing in backpacks and totes, donates a portion of its proceeds to a scholarship fund for Tanzanian school children to ensure that their classroom time is supported and subsidized. And to think this all started when Matt climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Matt Clough joins me now from Detroit, Michigan to fill us in. Hey, Matt, welcome to Full Frame.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Well, Matt, as I just said, this all began because you climbed a really high mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro. How did this all come about? What happened?
Yeah, so I mean, it started, I was in college at the time, just really excited about and kind of obsessed with climbing mountains. And a buddy and I both wanted to climb the 7 summits, which is the highest peak on every continent.
Wow.
And we had the chance to go to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and check one of those mountains off the list. So I ventured out and started training and, ended up going to Africa and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So that's how it happened, and it's the only, out of the 7 summits, it's the only one that I've accomplished, but hope to get to a few others in the future.
Okay, but you got sidetracked because obviously you decided to start this company that was going to help educate children in Africa. So tell me where that all came about and how you were inspired to do that.
Of course. So I was, as I was climbing the mountain, when you're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, you have porters with you, and they're waking you up with tea, they're cooking your meals, they're carrying your heavy rucksack as you're just sort of carrying like a small day pack. And over the course of the 4 days climbing up to the summit, you get to know them pretty well, pretty intimately. And they're just the most charismatic, wonderful people. There was one in particular, Benson, that I really just sort of connected with. He was just such a cool guy. And then I started learning more about just sort of like the area in Tanzania, and learned that some of them don't get work often enough and sometimes don't get paid enough to put their children through school. So I came home, I kind of had this reverse culture shock when I got home after being over in Tanzania, and really just wanted to do something to help. And knew that I wanted to do it about education. I went to school for design. I grew up sort of creating. I've always been a creative guy. So I thought, why don't I design a backpack that sort of represents the backpack that I used going to school every day, and then partner with a nonprofit and have your purchase provide 25 classroom hours for a student over there. So that's how it started.
Right. So your effort obviously is grassroots because you kind of started on your own and you designed these backpacks and totes on your own. So what was that like, just getting started in that way?
Yeah. When I started, I had just graduated from college. I had another job at the time, and I literally had to borrow $250 so I could buy a used sewing machine and and buy some canvas. So I was actually the one that made the first 20 or 25 backpacks.
Wow.
Selling them to friends, and then I kind of realized that wasn't, very scalable, at which point we found some factories and some sew shops in Los Angeles that now produce all the goods for us.
Okay, let's talk about who this benefits. As I mentioned in the intro, you're trying to help those who aren't getting the proper education and helping to subsidize actual classrooms and supplies. So tell me a little bit about where the money goes and how it's used.
Yeah, of course. So like I said, your purchase provides 25 hours of classroom learning for students. That's sort of the baseline. We've helped out with other stuff, with lunch programs and school supplies, and help out where we can beyond that. But primarily, I really just focused on providing scholarships, and we do that with a nonprofit partner. We found a nonprofit partner called Knock Foundation. They have their boots on the ground in the foothills of Kilimanjaro. They have a scholarship program. So what they do is they vet different students that really want to be in the classroom. They have a great vision for their future, but don't necessarily have the resources to get to the classroom and actually go to school. So I knew that, I'm not the expert in education. I knew that I really wanted to partner with people that knew what they were doing.
Right.
And we found this great organization that really seemed to, we just sort of clicked with them. They're a small organization. We also knew exactly where our money was going to be going, and really trusted them to do so. And also, just really, I feel like their values were aligned with ours, and just felt like the right partnership.
And since you started Stone and Cloth, how many kids or how many schools have you been able to help so far?
Yeah, so we're on track right now. The way that we sort of our ticker or marker is how many classroom hours we've supported, and we're on track to provide over 25,000 classroom hours for students. And as we're starting to figure out how to continue to grow, we're thinking about bringing on different partners, and hopefully we'll continue to push that forward.
Let me go back, though, in terms of how you go about choosing the kids who you subsidize and the classroom hours that you give. You mentioned vetting, and I know you do a lot of that, and that also includes vetting the families, too, because that's an important factor in the success of the kid, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a really big part of it, and that's a big part of the reason why we partnered with the people that we've partnered with is first and foremost, it's when I wanted to help, it was because there was that problem. I think the first thing to do is really start with asking questions and figure out, like, if you want to help someone, figure out what they actually want and then go from there. Yeah. So making sure that these students actually want to be in the classroom was really, really important, and also making sure that they had like a vision for their future was also important. Beyond that, if they didn't have the support at home from their family, then chances are they were going to be really distracted in the classroom and weren't going to be getting the benefits of actually being there. So one thing that the Knock Foundation does is they make sure that they the entire family understands the value of the scholarship so that they're getting the most out of it. One specific story, I was talking to Kim from NOC, and she was explaining to me that they had a student in the scholarship program, but he wasn't eating his lunch. What he was doing was he was taking his lunch home to share it with his family.
Oh, man.
And when it comes to being in the classroom, like if these kids aren't eating, then they're not going to be able to focus. They're going to be very distracted. They have all this other stuff on their mind. So like really just making sure that the family environment is positive, and they're also, there's food and the basic needs are taken care of is really important.
Right. The support system has to be there, but boy, how heartbreaking that he was taking his food home to help out his family, too.
I know, yeah.
Matt, what's next for you guys, then? You just keep doing what you're doing, or do you have some expansion plans? Well, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, a really sort of like big thing for us is really just focusing on our primary objective. We really just want to be a business that's valuable to the world, and we've sort of found sort of like where we hang our hat is really, providing these jobs in the U.S. and making really high quality products in America, and then providing scholarships. So we're really just hoping to be a part of this movement of social businesses that really want to use business as a force for good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great mission. And Matt, I share your love of climbing. I actually went to Everest and climbed up to Kalapatar.
Oh my gosh.
So
wow.
You might want to go there next if you have the time.
Yeah, that might have to be my next stop for sure.
Okay. All right, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Great work you're doing. Love your products, and good luck to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, coming up next, this week's full frame close-up, so stay with us. This week's full-frame close-up is a profile in cross-cultural curiosity. Now a resident of Boston, Dr. Nancy Berliner lived in China for many years. She spent her time there studying the language and culture and collecting historical artifacts that many Chinese people themselves aren't privy to. Now working for the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston as a curator, Nancy still travels to China often, uncovering treasures that help both the Chinese and Americans gain a better appreciation for the rich history of China. Full Frame visited with Nancy in Boston, where she is hard at work on her latest project.
I think it broadens a person's mind to understand that other cultures approach aspects of daily life in different manners. One of the aspects of Chinese culture that I really enjoy is the depth of history that one can see in almost any object. You can look at a painting and you can see references to many different aspects of history, of the culture, to thinking and expression. I had studied art as an undergraduate as well as Chinese, and then I ended up going to the Central Academy of Arts in Beijing. And though I had wanted to study painting, Chinese painting, while I was there, I was actually put into the Chinese art history course. Suddenly I was exposed to the wonderful history of Chinese art and Chinese painting, and got excited about that history, got interested in all different types of Chinese art. I wrote a book and put together an exhibition at the same time and traveled it around the United States. And before I knew it, I suddenly was a curator of Chinese art. first came to the Museum of Fine Arts, I gave a talk, and a woman stood up, and she was holding an 8x10 photograph of a Guanyin sculpture. And it was a sculpture that we now have in the Sung Gallery. And she said, "When is this object coming back on view?" And I said, "I have no idea. I just arrived here, but I will find out." And what I discovered is that this is an object that came to the museum in 1920, and it was on view in the museum until 1999. And it was a very much loved sculpture, and it had been off of view and in storage because it needed some conservation. And since it's been back out on display, so many people, American people who have no connection to Chinese culture, have come up to me and said, "This is my favorite object in the whole museum, and I'm so glad it's back on display." It's called the Bodhisattva of Compassion, and it's really touching to see how this object that was made almost 1,000 years ago in a country thousands and thousands of miles away, a very different time, a very different culture, but somehow it touches people. The Museum of Fine Arts is privileged to have an incredible collection of Sung art. The Sung dynasty goes from 960 to 1279. In China, in the Sung dynasty, it was a very urbanized culture. They had a much more conceptual and abstract concept of art. And in putting together this gallery, really what I wanted to do was give our visitors, our contemporary visitors, a sense of the Sung aesthetic, the sense of refinement and refinement through restraint. I have been involved in a project in the Forbidden City for over the past 10 years. The project is the Qianlong Garden Conservation Project, and I'm an advisor to World Monuments Fund, who collaborates with the Palace Museum on this project. We discovered more things behind other artworks that had been hidden for 250 years that were in absolutely perfect condition because they had been covered up for so long. And we were able to bring these to the United States and exhibit them. The project I'm working on right now in Chinese is called Ba Po, 8 Brokens. And it's a type of painting that arose in the second half of the 19th century and kind of died away in the middle of the 20th century and was basically forgotten about. These are paintings that look like somebody took old calligraphies and paintings and old pages from books, ripped them up, burned them, wormholes eaten through them, and then pasted them randomly on the surface of a paper. But instead of these being collages, they're actually trompe-l'oeil. They are painted, but painted to look real. And when I first saw these, I thought, wow, what is this about? And I thought, maybe this is all about being anti-tradition, just ripping up all the old wonderful treasures of Chinese art history. But in fact, I slowly learned that it was more about nostalgia. It was people seeing their old treasures disappearing and deteriorating, and people losing respect and interest for these wonderful ancient treasures. And most people didn't know anything about them, and even today I show them to Chinese art historians and they look at it and they say, Chinese people did that? And when did they do this? When I look at Chinese art, I think of it as Chinese visual culture, not just fine art. I look at visual objects that are created by all different types of people within a society. That it's not just the fine artists with the well-known signatures, but it's also people in the countryside who are making patchwork quilts for their beds, or it's people making woodblock prints because they can't afford to have original paintings hanging on their walls. Chinese society is very rich in visual culture, and I think it's important to recognize everything that contributes to our visual surroundings.
And that does it for this week. Join the conversation with us on social media. We are CCTV America on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And now you can watch Full Frame on our new mobile app, available worldwide on any smartphone for free. Get the latest news headlines and connect to us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Weibo. Search CCTV America on your app store to download today. And all of our interviews still can be found online at cctv-america.com. And of course, let us know what you'd like us to take Full Frame next. Simply email us at fullframe@cctv-america.com. Until then, I'm Mei Lee in Los Angeles. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Popping good old windscreen.
We good? Right, good.